Garen, bringing it back home, 5 o'clock kickoff, the cat fight between the Cheetahs and the Lions. Raymond Rule and Cornel Hendricks, I see you back for the Cheetahs. The Lions team has just been announced. What do you make of, I believe there's a bit of a reshuffle up front?
Yeah, the Lions have made a number of changes. Obviously this is a game they would have earmarked for a while now to pick up the 5 points. They've still got Elton Jantjies, but I think he's key at fly half. He's sort of the number one in Johannesburg now, ahead of Marnot Sporsov, who will be playing, I assume, Vodacom Cup semi-final rugby this weekend. They have changed both their props. Difficult to know whether that really strengthens the team or not. The Cheetahs have struggled at scrum time. I still think no matter who the Lions pick in their front row, they'll have ascendancy there. The Cheetahs, we saw them struggling badly last week against the Highlanders. They have picked Cornel Hendricks, Raymond Rule, two experienced wingers. So hopefully that means they're going to spread the ball wide, make it a bit of a spectacle. Their defense seems to be lacking a little bit. I think the Lions will have the X factor. They'll certainly need to pick up 5 points if they harbour any hopes of making the playoffs. It's not going to get any easier for them. But this is the sort of game against the bottom-ranked South African team. Cheetahs really struggling this season. So, with some degree of confidence, even though the Cheetahs have upset teams and Bloemfontein, I'm going to go for the Lions to do the business, pick up 5 points, and win by 5 to 6 points overall.
Okay. Robin, to conclude the weekend's action, of course, the Stormers taking on the Rebels. We're off to the press conference later, so we don't really know what the Stormers team looks like, but certainly an important game as far as the South African Conference is concerned.
Yes, absolutely vital. I think the Stormers, if you looked at this fixture pre-season and looked at it in the run-in, you would have thought this is a good one for the Stormers to bank. It's not quite as easy as that, because the Rebels have admirably sort of punched above their expected weights this season. Although they have had a little bit of a comeuppance, that nasty little setback against the Reds might just give them a little bit of a mini wobble or a crisis of confidence coming to Newlands, which of course is a tough place to play. Initially, earlier this week, it looked as though there was a bit of a cold front coming in and some strong northwest or something, which that chance seems to have abated quite a bit. So I'm not necessarily sure whether that helps the Stormers.
I don't think the Rebels have ever won in South Africa, have they?
No, they have a pretty ropey record here. And, at Newlands, with a sort of a near full house, as you'd expect might pitch up, it might have been a sort of a tempestuous game weather-wise, but now it doesn't look as though it will be, which that almost puts more of an onus on the Stormers to try and make sure they do get. I think they need 5 points out of this game. Alistair Coetzee has poo-pooed this notion of, we're playing for bonus points. He rightly does say you don't take the win for granted. You have to first make sure you put in the hard yards to put away a team like the Rebels just to win the game. That is key. But the Stormers are still shy in the bonus points column, and that could come home to roost in terms of home semi-final placing. So if they're a truly ambitious team, I do think that in the next few weeks they've got to start thinking we've got to play a little bit more adventurously, a little bit more enterprise to try to push for the 4 tries if we can, if we've done enough to make sure that we've sealed off the win, but push for the tries as well. And they're under a little bit of pressure because they haven't been very inspiring Stormers performances. I think one thing the Newlands faithful will want this weekend is a more upbeat, more joyous sort of game, brand of rugby from the Stormers, if conditions allow. So I still feel fairly confidently that the Stormers should win this one. It'll be a hell of a surprise if the Rebels, for all their sort of decency in some positions, you've got guys like Scotty Higginbotham, Mitch Inman, they've been real stalwarts for them this season. They're real hard grafters. But I still think the Stormers should have a little bit too much sort of Springbok class in their midst for a team of sort of fighters. I think Stormers by perhaps 8 to 10.
Garen, anything to add there?
And I agree with Rob. For me, interesting whether Sabelo Senatla is going to make the transition from sevens to the starting 15 or even on the bench. He brings that X factor. I think the Stormers have been lacking this season. Certainly a flyer on the wing. But yeah, I agree with Rob. The Stormers at home should win this game. They should win most games, actually, to be honest, at Newlands against any opposition. The Rebels were fairly woeful last week. I was quite surprised, as we said. But to date, they have had one of their better seasons. So they're certainly going to be arriving full of confidence. First match on tour, they want to get it off to a good start. I think they'll be competitive for the first half. A lot will depend, again, unfortunately, on the referee. I see Stuart Berry's got handling the game. With him in charge, he's been a little bit pro-South African, I must say. Some of the calls have been ridiculous this season by all refs, but him in particular been very pro the home side. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a few calls in our favour and go on to win by, as Rob said, almost double points.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
Thanks,
very much.
Nick.